Hi, I'm Michael Polozola with the LSU AgCenter, and we're going to look at cleft grafting of Mayhaws. Let's take a second to look at some of the tools used in cleft grafting that we're going to use in this video for Mayhaws. This is the type of grafting knife I like to use. It's called a Tina heavy-duty grafting knife. German steel, holds its edge a long time, very heavy-duty, very beneficial. You're going to want a nice pair of pruners to take your tops out and be able to have a good surface to work with. You're going to want some grafting tape or some other tape to use to bind it together. Some people use either green grafting tape. I've even seen black electrical tape used. But the benefit of this is kind of a porous, breathable grafting tape that works really well. And it naturally degrades and falls off about when you need it to. This is paraffin. We're going to use it to kind of coat the whole thing with afterwards to ensure that it doesn't dry out and desiccate. And the other is making certain you've got a good assortment of scion wood. For the cleft grafting, we're going to use probably the smaller pieces. And these are the tools that should get you started. Some other things that might be beneficial is a small screwdriver to maybe wedge open the cleft afterwards. But you'll find, depending on your method, what tools you find you're most comfortable with. Clean up the bottom. It's very common for Mayhaws to have a lot of little lower limbs. Decide about where you want your graft union to be. I'm going to do it about this height there. Now you do want to watch. So say for some reason I was going to attempt it up here. Everywhere you have a side branch coming out would be an area of increased hardness. So you do want to try to pick an area where you don't have any lower limbs so it's not kind of knotty and it cuts down smoothly. Again, this is something we do when you have a mismatch between the piece of scion wood you have available to graft and your rootstock. We could not successfully do a whip and tongue on this. They would not match up well. And it's very common to have this because often your wood is just a tad bit smaller on larger growing trees. We're going to want to look and see that this is actually a very premium, very good piece of scion wood. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 buds. We could even cut this in half and have 2 pieces for if you're dealing with something rare. To identify which way is up, in general the buds should point upward and you should see a small leaf scar below. So I can tell that this points upward in that direction. So this is a very good piece of scion wood. So for cleft grafting, you're going to do, this is what it's called, this is your cleft. You're going to want to very carefully, slowly wiggle it downward. On something soft like Mayhaw, it's real easy to go down with too much force and accidentally cut it at a wrong angle. And that makes you, in that case, you'll need to just go ahead and restart. Going to our scion wood, this one is actually going to be, even though it's a great piece of scion wood, going to be a little difficult because each one of these, where it buds, you can see it changes angles just ever so slightly. We're going to take our piece and we're going to make a pie wedge shape cut. Ideally, if you're good enough, with enough practice, you can just do 2 cuts and you line it up. This is tricky. You can see it kind of bulges where that bud was. We're going to see if it fits, and if not, we can just go a little bit further up and work on it a little bit more. Some people use a small screwdriver for this roll. See? And yep, I can already see. I don't like the angle on that, so we're going to redo our cut because it's not straight. It bulges out. So ultimately, the next good spot I see on this piece of wood is there. It's got plenty of good buds. We're okay. When you're doing cuts like this, it's natural for you to kind of sway up afterwards and it bulges a little bit on the bottom. So the easiest way to deal with that is just cut that little bulge off. We'll see if this fits. So you can see it's wider on that end than this end. That's what I mean by pie shaped, because you want it to be more narrow facing inward so that it closes up better on you. Ideally, it would be nice and flush on both sides, but we've got decent cambium contact on both sides. This looks a little bit odd because you could see where this was a branch coming out here, so it makes it a little bit wider there, but it actually lines up. Next step, we're going to bind it up. If you don't, this would dehydrate and not heal well. This extra little pressure from binding it up really helps the healing process. Be very careful not to wiggle your wood out of place, but also not to bind it too tightly because it will also shoot up out of place if you're not careful. Last step, wrap up with paraffin. The most critical spot to wrap up is the bottom graft union. Make certain to kind of pre-stretch your paraffin lightly like this. You want it to be somewhat thin, especially along the top, so that buds naturally can push through it. And this is waxed at the top, so it's not as critical. I like to take any little bit of extra I have and give myself another good coating over the graft union. This should naturally degrade and fall off, hopefully during the course of the growing season afterwards. And that is how you do cleft grafting of Mayhaws.